And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Rasta Report here on LID Radio, LID TV here on livingintheblack.com. My name is Ketiopia Wadu, aka the Conscious Rasta. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time. 5 p.m. GMT and 8 p.m. East African time, we get together with you. And we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Tuesday. It is the 17th day of February, 2026 in the Western Gregorian calendar. This corresponds to year 6266 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we've realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and on livingintheblack.com. Welcome, 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 Aquaba. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am your servant. I am the Conscious Rasta. This is the Conscious Rasta Report. We are loyal to our motherland, our continent, our future, to our children. We are loyal to our brothers and our sisters, to our families. We are a loyal, dedicated people. Today, here's what we have for today's program. I hope you find it to be absolutely compelling. Welcome to today's episode of the Conscious Rasta Report. We're in the first book study for today. In the first book study, we are creating space for perfect health. We explore paths towards wellness and awakened living. The book we're going to be studying today, Living Super in Paradise, critiques the failure of the Federal Adverse Events Reporting System, unmasking deadly risk of iatrogenics. Iatrogenics stands for death by doctor, doctor-induced deaths from medical errors, hospital infections, and worse. Next up in our second part of our discussion, we're going to be revealing the book Africa Rising. It's one of my favorite books. Dawn is Breaking Over Africa, which celebrates Africa's economic transformation and rising influence amid shifting world power dynamics. It highlights Africa's growth, unleashing unprecedented opportunities for investment, and this growth in resource wealth, youthful demographics. That's a very important part of the study. And it highlights and strategic nation building, self-determination. So that's all on the table for today. It's going to be a good day. And I just realized there I have to grab the books for today. I do pull them out and then I stack things around the room, getting ready to go out to each and every one of you. I hope you are compelled to be with us today. It's going to be a good day. Everybody, please take a moment, sign in. Let me know, let everyone else and the family know that you are here, you're present, and your presence is greatly, greatly appreciated. So here's where we go. Let me just first of all see if I have my listening audience in the house. We'll say greetings to you as you get a chance to check in with us here today on the broadcast. The first book I have in my hand, Living Super in Paradise. In Living Super in Paradise, Balance and Harmony, written within the flow of energy which courses throughout life, are the primary goals upon which we construct our pathway toward destiny. We are not victims of consequence and circumstance. To the contrary, we are creators, innovators, and alchemists. We envision ourselves as propagators of a new golden age within which we plan to thrive and generously share with all who are worthy of having and being, of loving and being loved. As I introduce this body of work to you, it is my hope that you will be inspired to propel your greatest ambitions forward as a gift to humanity. Creating space for perfect health within our lives is a deliberate process. It will not be the happenstance and does require our sustained focus on specific goals. Let's get ready to challenge the world by beginning the transformation within. I trust that you will enjoy every step of this magnificent journey. Now, I got to remember, on my new books, I do not put the back cover text in 10-point type. That was in 10-point type, which is why you saw me stumbling through it. But this is a really good book. First, I begin with an introductory chapter, and I always open up each chapter with a quote. The first one comes from Les Brown. He writes, "You must be willing to do the things today that others won't do in order to have the things tomorrow that others won't have." Les Brown. He is a bright, brilliant brother. And speaking of bright, brilliant brothers, we do not celebrate the passing of Jesse Jackson. I had no love for Jesse Jackson from the morning of April 4th, 1968. We have traced Jesse Jackson's actions step by step. And of course, you recognize that was the day that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had his head nearly blown off in Memphis, Tennessee. And Jesse Jackson's actions on that day, all day long, from before the killing, has excluded him from my circle of embrace and veneration, respect. Also, the last point I'll say, there was a trial of the man who was the only trial that ever did happen in Memphis, Tennessee. It was Judge Joe Brown presided over that trial. And if you want to know what I think about Jesse Jackson, please do go to YouTube, not right now, but a little bit later. Go to YouTube, look up Judge Joe Brown and capital A-N-D and Jesse Jackson. Then you will hear what I think about Jesse Jackson. What we're into introduction to this book. Staking your claim for a good life. Too often we've been taught that within this culture to want for something outside of ourselves. Media constantly displays the lives of others. Celebrities, athletes, media-appointed black leaders, the wealthy and the famous, as opposed to models of elegance, joyous living, beauty, and seeming perfection. The experience and logical voice inside each of us knows better. We have been around long enough to realize that everyone's life is unique, and that much of our distinction is built upon those problems, challenges, trials, and tribulations which we have experienced. This is the persistence of what I call the cult. There is the persistence of what I call the cult of celebrity. If society's compulsion with the famous is so pervasive and persists among a vast diversity of world cultures, then there must be some substance to it. Yet you don't need to be validated by what celebrities do. Putting aside how today's media has a strong tendency to manipulate the public for their selfish ends, we want to come to terms with our desires to optimize our health, wealth, and life experiences. Most of us do experience aspects of, quote, the good life at various times of our lives. There's nothing at all wrong with wanting to live and enjoy a life of adventure and reward. I'm going to go forward. First, we have to establish what is it that this book is intended to fix. And that is there is so much trouble in the world. First subchapter. The world of today embraces ambitions of doing big, creating wealth, and transforming the larger society. Still, there is much within this world which needs to be corrected or optimized. If today's 7.5 billion inhabitants of this beautiful blue water-covered pearl of a planet floating through the galaxy, if they are to enjoy all of the benefits of Earth, then we must all do something to make it the utopia that our creative imagination would have it become. Ours is a planet of unfathomable unfathomable abundance. Scientists search throughout the universe, far beyond the edges of the Milky Way galaxy, attempting to find conditions which could support an abundance of life as such as that which exists on Earth. They search for the basics of temperature, water, atmosphere, and the basic building blocks of life, which would all come together to create an Earth-like environment. As we come to comprehend the sheer miracle of this planetary existence, it naturally follows that we have a powerful desire to make the absolute best of that which society blesses us. So I'm going to go forward. We're just kind of introducing sections. The next is creating order from chaos. I have to introduce this paragraph before going there. Too many of us are feeling too bad, too often, about our fate as we see chaos and disorder spreading like cancer throughout the society, interrupting and questioning the legitimacy of the good life which we wish to order up for ourselves and our family. We want to find a new and reliable pathway toward the idealized world within which we gracefully age. We need and want the power to do better for our world, our loved ones, and, of course, ourselves. Creating order from chaos. And that's where we're now starting to understand what the book is coming to. Creating order from chaos. You are holding this book in your hands at this moment as part of your powerful, motivating, and purposeful desire to manifest your power to make change for the better. The universe is full of seemingly random energy in motion, which is known as entropy, E-N-T-R-O-P-Y. A manifestation of chaotic forces which ultimately intersect to cause things to happen. Within this world we live, we need to master the ability to control this chaos all around us and to transform it into something that sustains the best qualities of life. We are the powerful alchemist, the one to create gold from lead, order out of chaos, turn that which is dull into brilliance. The concept of alchemy is ancient and ubiquitous in the evolution of human civilization. Alchemy exists when a farmer takes seed, soil, sun, and labor and turns it into abundant substance that gives life to the family, village, cities, and nations. Alchemy is what happens when simple strands of fiber from plants and wool are extracted, refined, colored, made into fabrics, and fashioned into cultural elegance. Alchemy is the root of chemistry, with which science identifies the very elements of the earth and recombines them for human progress and prosperity. Alchemy is what all of us do when we are creating. This innovating spirit is inherent within each of us by the luxury of our birth. Enlightened societies teach the spirit of alchemy to everyone, to every citizen of the nation, empowering each of us to give forward our best efforts to transform that which has been potential into something brilliant, dynamic, and transformative. We read, study, learn, and master a spectrum of life skills to become masters of alchemy. As alchemists, we turn that which is dull into that which beams brilliance. For this, we should be celebrated by the larger society. Fortunately for us all, toward this mastery, nature has provided tools and opportunity all around us. Then we go on to talk about nature's elegance. I want to go forward, keeping color, energy, and balance in your life. We will empower ourselves by mastering the ability to create order out of the chaos which is too common in society. We are consciously alchemistic. We read, learn, and grow into most competent at manifesting the ideal world which we have become convinced is our true and proper destiny. Every day and in every way, we engage deliberate processes toward managing the world into which we are born with a mission to make it more better because of our presence. In the world of healthy cuisine, we encourage people to realize the value of abundant color in the food that we consume. The brain's sensors are naturally drawn to food which is full of deep, rich colors, especially attracted to deep greens, shades of red, and various hues of gold. These colors indicate the primary nutrients that are present and haven't had the essence of life processed out of them. The conscious and subconscious mind informs us that eating from an abundance of color will lead us to a healthy existence. Rich colors in our food make us feel good on multiple levels. Similarly, in life, the abundance of color indicates richness, accomplishment, sustainability, and prosperity. We want our lives to feel right and rewarding, as if every day we are walking in an endless meadow of deep green grasses and wildflowers of every hue. It is my intention within this book to assist you to bring the rich colors of paradise into your life. Our very vision of utopian life includes this eternal springtime with which we have imagined as paradise. We have come to associate an abundance of color with prosperity, peace, sustainability, and youthful vibrance. I'm going to skip forward. Ooh, it's hard to skip over this because I'm setting up an attitude here in this early chapter, the introductory chapter. So I'm going to skip forward to chapter 1. Why? Because it is a hostile world out there. First, I begin with 2 quotes. The first from Albert Einstein. The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. Albert Einstein. And the second one, an ancient African proverb. If there is no enemy within, then the enemies outside cannot hurt you. So we first talk about stressors, mental and environmental stressors. And this gets real good over the next 2-3 pages. Please do follow, listen closely, because I am sharing pearls of wisdom with each and every one of you. I would encourage each and every one of you while you're gathering these pearls, please do take a moment. Let us know you're in the house. It is a together thing that we are doing. And I encourage us all to be together, learn together, grow together. It is such a wonderful opportunity for me to be with you every day on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and on livinginblack.com. And I've still seen no one, not one person checking in yet today. But I know you are in the house. So take a moment and just let us know that you do appreciate, love what it is that we are learning and teaching. Stressors, mental and environmental. For far too many of us, we allow forces outside of ourselves to direct a considerable portion of our time and energy. The world is a complex place, and many of us live within societies wherein external factors impose upon our personal space at a level which has never existed in the whole of human existence. It is an ever-increasing rate which these intrusive influences are impacting our lives. Many of these influences create stress, and the consequences of the proliferation of mental and environmental stressors negatively affect our well-being. The central theme of this book is to instruct the reader to identify these stressors, whether in real time or, better yet, before these influences can even have a chance to impose upon our comfort. The fact that these stressing agents exist at all, at such a broad-based level, demands that we adopt a defensive system that is even more comprehensive. It is wiser to prevent disaster and disorder than it is to work to reverse these crises that have already occurred. The spectrum of stressors, which we identify as too extensive to cover comprehensively at this point. I am separating these stressors into two broad categories of mental stressors and environmental. Throughout this book, you will encounter strategies for shielding yourself from their negative impact. I will highlight many of the most common mental and environmental stressors so that through conscious awareness, you will develop the ability to identify, isolate, and overcome stressing agents in real time. First, we begin with a list of mental stressors. Difficult personal relationships with family and friends. Point: loss of a loved one through death or divorce. Financial difficulties and persisting poverty. Work overload and occupational stress. Loss of job or inability to find work. Noise pollution. Chronic illness and pain. Poor self-image or body image. Prolonged anxiety, phobias, or other psychological disorders. Sleep deprivation. Excessive exposure to negative news, media, and entertainment. Excessive engagement with mobile communication devices, smartphones. Domestic violence or sexual trauma. Combative political and societal affairs. Severe weather, traffic jams, and bad customer service. Personal scheduling and excessive strenuous duty to family or community. And lastly, a cluttered living or work environment. Now, when we talk about environmental stressors, they include, but are not limited to, indoor air pollution, outdoor air pollution, toxic household chemicals like paint, cleaners, and flooring materials, agricultural pesticides, personal care products which contain endocrine disrupting chemicals, EDCs, work-related chemical exposures, poor nutrition and chemical contamination in the food supply, excessive exposure to sugar, salt, and fat in the diet, along with highly processed foods, substance abuse with alcohol, smoking, and illicit drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, government policies and bureaucracy, electromagnetic radiation and radio frequency radiation, EMR and EFR and RFR, national crises like storms, earthquakes, and warfare, water supply contaminants, and a vast spectrum of carcinogenic, cancer-causing substances in the environment. There are many more mental and environmental influences that one could add to these lists of stressors the ones that I've listed are most common in our lives. We must work individually and collectively to lessen the impact of these negative influences. Correcting this widespread problem will not be easy, yet efforts toward this end will bring immense rewards to individuals, communities, nations, and the world at large. The positive impact of working in collaboration to eliminate social and environmental stressors could benefit society for many generations, especially as we focus on those macro influences which affect the most people the most often. Now I'm going into the first major revelation section that reveals what's happening in the world. We're going to talk about a plague of healthcare related stress. In the United States today, there is a severe and overarching crisis regarding national health care. Americans pay more than any other national population in the world for health care services per capita. This average has risen to more than $10,000 for every man, woman, and child in the country, topping out at some $340 billion annually. Of course, it's gone much further since the book was published around 2015 or so. Much, much worse. This excessive healthcare expense has not delivered a population that is comparatively healthy nor satisfied with the system for which they are paying. There are multiple failing points within the spectrum of the U.S. healthcare system. One of this nation's healthcare system's greatest embarrassments is the number of people whose lives are cut short because of medical errors that injure or kill patients on an annual basis. This figures on iatrogenic, medically induced injury or death, which occur annually. The figures on iatrogenic, medically induced injury or death on an annual basis, which are staggering. Yet most people still are committed to this system, despite its appalling statistics on the outcome of such dependence. Statistics are alarming when we consider how it has come to pass that so many American adults are on prescription drugs. So many are on prescription drugs. It is and it should be shocking to realize a huge proportion of the U.S. adult population that is presently ingesting some form of pharmaceutical prescription. Washington Post author Brady Dennis reported on a newly published study in the Journal of the American Medical Association JAMA Journal from November 2015, which highlighted the alarming number of American adults that were on some form of prescription drug. It read in no small part, quote, nearly 3 in 5 American adults take a prescription drug, up markedly since 2000 because of much higher use of almost every type of medication, including antidepressants and treatments for high cholesterol and diabetes. In a study published Tuesday in the Journal of the American Medical Association, researchers found that the prevalence of prescription drug use among people 20 and older had risen to 59% in 2012 from 51% just a dozen years earlier. During the same period, the percentage of people taking 5 or more prescription drugs nearly doubled, up to 15% from 8%. 5 or more drugs simultaneously, and most of the time these are for life, forever. It's crazy. Researchers in the JAMA Journal study cited in the Post article concluded that this change in prescription drug usage of 9% increased prevalence over the course of 12 years was largely due to a dramatic increase in overweight and obesity. Our research has further linked excessive weight gain to a spectrum of chronic disorders, including, but not limited to, hypertension, heart failure, diabetes, and other elements of the cardiometabolic systems, or syndrome, cardiometabolic syndrome. Also, another frequently prescribed drug treats gastroesophageal reflux, a widespread condition among the overweight or obese. If this prevailing trend has continued since the end of the 2012 reporting period, then as many as 63% of American adults over 20 years of age could today be on drugs. Over 1 in 5 of those currently using 5 or more prescriptions. And the trend did continue since the book came out. And I think the book is dated now at about 2012. And it's a shame. Came out in 2018. No, 2012 it came out. It is a shame, though, because the fact of the matter is now well over 63% of Americans are on some form of prescription drug. Somebody's taking more than one. Many people are. Going forward, we do see emerging data to confirm that metabolic disorders, to include cardiometabolic syndrome, continue to rise. As a clinical nutrition consultant, I see this all too frequently. And to make matters worse, many practicing physicians do not recognize the existence of this condition within their patients. Because the doctor is unfamiliar with the pattern of metabolic syndrome, too often patients will be prescribed drugs to patch over the symptoms of what are much deeper systemic problems with the patient's overall health. Many, if not all, of these systemic challenges which form the foundation of pathogenesis can be remedied with lifestyle modifications that modulate these disorders. This situation is especially true when the causes of disease and disorder are traceable to nutrition-related problems, which lead to overweight and obesity. We can also focus upon metabolic disorders, which correspond to malnutrition. Those include overweight or underweight, obesity, elevated levels of triglyceride in the blood, abdominal obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and imbalances within blood lipid levels, the LDL-HDL ratio. These very conditions which lead to these metabolic disorders are also at the root of widespread chronic inflammation, which is plaguing the American population along with most of the world's acute and chronically sick populations. Regarding inflammation, it is critical that we must take a close look at this one condition, which is at the heart of so many different diseases and disorders. Next, we talk about preventing inflammation from ruining your life. And it starts to get more detailed here. I'm just going to skip over part of it. I'll introduce it, and then I'm going to give you a couple of bullet points. As a clinical nutrition consultant, health researcher, and certified advocate for improving public health policies, I almost can't speak about improving health outcome without spending some measure of conversation focusing on the challenge of chronic inflammation. My 2016 book, Living Superfood Longevity, Mastering the Possibilities of High-Quality Life Extension, contained extensive references to the impact of inflammation in disease causation. According to the extensive research included in that book, inflammation is directly and indirectly linked to some 200 different diagnoses, including the top 10 disease killers in the U.S. population. When listening to clients describing the conditions they wish to implement nutrition-based solutions, the first thing I am listening for is a description of linkages to inflammation formation. Among many natural healers, as well as among allopathic practitioners, we find it all too common that clients are presenting inflammation-based disorders as their primary or secondary complaints. Skipping forward, I hate to skip over this, but it's very important. The following excerpts from Living Superfood Longevity showcase just a few key factors which associate inflammation with common health problems that we intend to remedy with lifestyle modification. Point 1. Inflammation's role in aging encompasses multiple subtopics, including the central question of cause, effect, or both. Oxidative stress, mitochondrial functionality, immunosenescence, meaning your immune system aging, as well as endocrine endocrinosenescence, your endocrine system aging, and a cascade of other critical metabolic functions. Point. Another factor that you would call both causative of aging and associated with it is chronic inflammation. I'm quoting from the other book. We all know that aging people suffer an epidemic of outward inflammatory diseases such as arthritis, but chronic inflammation does interior damage to brain cells, arterial walls, heart valves, and other structures in the body. Heart attack, stroke, heart failure, heart valve failure, and Alzheimer's disease have been linked to the chronic inflammatory cascade that so often affects aging people. I'm going to share just one more of these bullet points. Oh, this is also very important. I hate skipping over this. But this bullet point, a high intake of milk might, however, have undesirable effects because milk is the main dietary source of D-galactose. Experimental evidence in several animal studies indicates that chronic exposure to D-galactose is deleterious to health, and the addition of D-galactose by injections or in the diet is an established animal model of aging. Even a low dose of D-galactose induces changes that resemble natural aging in animals, including shortened lifespan caused by oxidative stress damage, chronic inflammation, neurodegeneration, a decreased immune response, and gene transcriptional changes. Based upon a concentration of lactose in cow's milk of approximately 5%, 1 glass of milk comprises about 5 grams of D-galactose. The increase of oxidative stress with aging and chronic low-grade inflammation is not only a pathogenic mechanism of cardiovascular disease and cancer in humans, but also a mechanism of age-related bone loss and sarcopenia. The high amount of and sarcopenia means muscle wasting in elderly people. The high amount of lactose and therefore D-galactose in milk with theoretical influences on processes such as oxidative stress and inflammation makes the recommendation to increase milk intake for prevention of fractures a conceivable contradiction. Next, we go on to talk about C-reactive protein as an indicator also that you are stressed on a molecular level. And then we're going forward. Let me wrap up a couple. This is all important. Don't let nobody bring you down. For those grammatologists who are reading this book, you likely notice that the theme for this subchapter, don't let nobody bring you down, seemingly contains a double negative. As such, a correct interpretation might seem to encourage the reader to allow someone to bring them down. Don't let nobody. I was deliberate in the way that this phrase is stated. What I mean is to caution the reader to avoid attributing their problems and challenges on a non-existent character who I am referring to as, quote, nobody. In simpler terms, take responsibility for your mental state and life conditions. Don't attribute your situation to nobody, quote unquote. In your ultimate empowered condition, you are indeed the master of your fate. You are the captain of your soul, as the poet William Ernest Henley stated in his classic Invictus. He wrote, "Beyond this place of wrath and tears, looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." By the completion of this book, I intend to instruct all who would will into place for themselves a place in paradise wherein to live, to cease blaming life's challenges on ethereal entities, Too often, people will find external factors, unforeseen circumstances, or remotely associated entities. They will blame them for the challenges which come into our lives. What I am suggesting is that our ultimate empowerment is down another pathway. After that, we take primary responsibility for creating the broad set of conditions which guide us through life's many pathways. I'm skipping forward to the next page, the next subchapter. Are we addicted to harmful technologies? Yeah. And it's very, very important. It talked about young people and their smartphones and these technologies, etc. I'm going to take a moment here and just wipe my nose and then continue. And I'm going to have to speed forward. In the book, I'm going to go forward. We're talking now about this couple of chapters I'm skipping over. Are we addicted to harmful technologies? Yes. On page 24, that's just how far we got through the book. The book is 173 pages long. On page 24, iatrogenic injury and the impact of medical profiteering. This is, I think, one of the most important studies that I have ever engaged in life. And now I am sharing it with you. It is in the book. It's always been in the book. And I highly recommend that you get this book and learn what I'm about to teach. The first week of May 2016, results from a study conducted by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine were published in a British medical journal that alarmed many within the medical research community. On the national level, a few publications noted the study's startling revelations on the high rate of medical errors in U.S. hospitals that cause injury and death. The Johns Hopkins University study first came to my attention in the Washington Post article. It was for me confirmation of what many of us had strongly suspected for many years, and I wrote about it 10 years earlier in a book called High Crimes of Murder. That the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and other U.S. federal health agencies were covering up the high number of Americans killed and injured annually by bad medicine. They wrote, the issue of patient safety has been a hot topic in recent years, but it wasn't always that way. In 1999, when I first wrote about it, an Institute of Medicine report called Preventable Medical Errors an Epidemic shocked the medical establishment and led to significant debate about what could be done. The IOM, based on one study, estimated deaths because of medical errors as high as 98,000 a year. That was the year I wrote about it. McCary's research involves a more comprehensive analysis of 4 large studies, including ones by the Health and Human Services Department Office of the Inspector General and the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality that took place between 2000 and 2008. His calculation of 251,000 deaths equates to nearly 700 deaths a day. About 9.5% of all deaths annually in the United States, death by doctor, death by medicine. Now, let me cite that study so you can confirm it. The citation, researchers, quote, researchers, semicolon, medical errors now the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States, written by Ariana Ejung Chia, May 3rd, 2016, in the Washington Post. Medical errors now 3rd leading cause of death. It gets worse than that by the time you finish my book, this chapter. It's very likely that this figure of more than 251,000 annual deaths from iatrogenic causes in the U.S. could be much higher. In 2013, it was reported in the Journal of Patient Safety that this tally of death by doctor ranged from 210,000 to as high as 400,000 patients who seek care at a hospital. The following appeared on the online website FAERS Healthcare, citing the research of John T. James, PhD, of the advocacy group Patient Safety America. Author of this news release is Lean McDonald, wrote in part, quote, medical errors leading to patient death are much higher than previously thought and may be as high as 400,000 deaths a year, according to a new study in the Journal of Patient Safety. The latest numbers are dramatically higher than those in the Institute of Medicine's IOM's 1999 report, To Err is Human. Building a safe healthcare system, which estimated that up to 98,000 people a year die because of hospital mistakes. The data for that report is based on medical record reviews from 1984 and doesn't take into account studies published since 2008. It gets worse. The new study reveals that each year preventable adverse events, PAEs, lead to the death of 210,000 to 400,000 patients who seek care in a hospital. Those figures would make medical errors the third leading cause of death behind heart disease and cancer, according to CDC statistics. Now, I'm writing, despite these two meta-analyses which examine a spectrum of other research studies and extensive data from health reporting services, the CDC, National Institutes of Health, and other U.S. federal agencies alerted the nation's press that medical errors in hospitalized situations had become the third leading cause of death in the nation behind heart disease and cancer. According to the most recent published data on annual deaths in the U.S. from the CDC, the top 10 causes of death for the year reporting 2014 were, number 1, heart disease, 633,000. 2, cancer, 596,000. 3, chronic lower respiratory diseases, 155,000. Accidents, 146,000. Stroke, 140,000. Alzheimer's, 110,000. Diabetes, 80,000. Influenza and pneumonia, 57,000. Nephrotic syndrome and nephrosis, that's kidney disease, 49,000, 50,000. Intentional self-harm, suicide, 44,000. Now, I'm going to have to skip forward. I'm going to give you my and Dr. Gary Null's studies figures on these numbers. My own June 2016 list, which I have updated several times since it was first published, partially relied on a 2004 study by Gary Null, PhD, et al., entitled Death by Medicine, which was still being referred to as the most comprehensive tally of iatrogenic injury and death. Null's 2004 study calculated that as many as 783,000 Americans were dying each year from bad medicine outcome. 12 years later, my research had raised that figure to an estimated 1,069,000. The top 10 causes of iatrogenic death in the U.S., which I listed, were as follows. Number 1, medical errors in hospitalized, from 251,000 to 400,000. Number 2, medical errors in outpatient clinics. These are all I added together. Medical errors in outpatient clinics, 199,000, 2014 figures. Adverse drug reactions, ADRs, from the FAERS report 2014, 124,000. Bed sores, pressure ulcers, 115,000 from the Gary Null study, 2004. Malnutrition, 108,000, 2004. Hospital-acquired infections, 98,000, or actually 100,000, from 2015. Unneeded medical and surgical procedures, 37,000 deaths from 2004. Antibiotic-resistant superbugs, non-hospitalized, 24,000. Surgery-related, 32,000. Failed therapies, question mark. It's very likely that this calculation of iatrogenic deaths could be even higher. The number of annual deaths from adverse drug reactions to, quote, properly prescribed medicines is attributable to the Federal Adverse Events Reporting System, FAERS. Yet their online reporting system abruptly stopped tallying annual figures on deaths from ADRs after the first quarter of 2015, tracing stated figures from 2006, when 37,309 annual deaths were reported, to the last complete year, 2014, when 124,000 deaths were reported. We could see that this figure consistently increased year on year by an average of 10,827 deaths. The last tally for the first quarter of 2015 reported 44,693 deaths, which might have forecasted close to 180,000 for that year had the FAERS accounting continued. To resolve this gap in FAERS reporting on annual deaths, I created a graphic chart from existing data showing the rise from 2006 to 2014. I then projected this chart continuing to the year 2017. According to my calculations from charting this trend and allowing for an annual increase of ADRs of averaging 10,827 per year, by the end of 2017, it would be forecast to reach 200,426 adverse drug reaction deaths per year in the U.S. 211,253 Americans are projected to die from adverse drug reactions to properly prescribed medications in 2018. Predicted injuries for ADRs for 2018 are expected to top 1.5 million in the United States. So then we ask the question, well, why are they covering this up? That was when I went and I found out that I had written about this earlier in the book, High Crimes of Murder. So conclusion. The incidence of serious or fatal adverse drug reactions in U.S. hospitals is found to be extremely high, while our results must be viewed with circumspection because of heterogeneity among studies and small biases in the samples. These data nevertheless suggest that adverse drug reactions represent an important clinical issue, which is why I say to you, I will not be using drugs. Next, I go into the 7 principles of optimal health. You've heard me talk about them before. I think I wrote about them in every book on health I wrote since coming up with that in the book, Living Superfood Research. Number 1, the breath. 2, water, hydration. Number 3, food, nutrition. Number 4, exercise. Number 5, fasting, detoxification. Number 6, sleep, rest. And number 7, the psycho-spiritual orientation. I talk about those in great detail and about living within the natural seasons. The next subchapter, you are much more than what you eat. Many commonly reported cliches are just not true or applicable for our intentions. Think about the following. You fight fire with fire? Not true. Fire is best quenched with water. Just ask any firefighter. 2, ignorance is bliss. To the contrary, being uninformed is most often impoverishing. Another cliche, you can do anything you put your mind to. It's not necessarily. If that were true, then Angela Bassett and I would have been lovers for many years. Point 4, good things come to those who wait. Really? Those who wait are most often left behind or left out completely. Another cliche, I'm just wanting this close with this one. There's a bunch of them here. Money doesn't buy happiness. Yes, it does, especially for poor folks. I get happy when I spend money to vacation, get my car fixed, and pay the rent on time. My daughters get happy when daddy brings them gifts. And so on, it never goes. Cheaters never win. We're debunking these cliches. We get used to hearing them, and our brain accepts these things as true, but not true. You haven't even thought these things out. Chapter 3 of the book, Purposeful Living, running into running, but you can't run away from yourself. This chapter begins with a quote by Germany Kent, is his name. You become what you digest into your spirit. Whatever you think about, focus on, read about, talk about, you're going to attract more of it into your life. Make sure they're all positive. That's a powerful quote from Germany Kent. We talk about the luxury of optimal health, and it is a luxury. They say health is wealth. Then how come many, many more of us do not cultivate our health as wealth? We neglect to follow it through. Live long, love strong, and prosper. That's one of my codes. When we talk about full spectrum hypernutrition, and I'm now going to just wrap it up. Let me go to the end of the book. Let me give the chapter headings. Chapter 3 is Purposeful Living. Chapter 4 is the logic of chronic diseases. This is very important because chronic disease follows logical patterns. I began with this quote, chapter 4, from George MacDonald. The more I work with the body, keeping my assumptions in a temporary state of reservation, the more I appreciate and sympathize with a given disease. The body no longer appears as a sick or irrational demon, but as a process with its own inner logic and wisdom. So we talk about cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and obesity, and this is very logical. We have to understand logic. We talk about cancer. And in ancient Egypt, when the first cancer diagnoses are identified, we have as best evidence that the rate of cancer in that event was about, we get this from the Edmund Smith papyri, the rate of cancer was about, from the 800 mummified remains that have been examined forensically for cancer, within these mummified remains, the incidence of cancer was 0.25% of cancer at death. At the beginning of the 20th century, the rate of cancer at death in the U.S. was 6 in 100. A century later, it had risen to 24 in 100. Today, 18 years into the new century, the incidence of cancer at death in the U.S. stands at 1 in 3 and is expected to reach 1 in 2 during the current generations. It now stands at over 2 of every 5. Despite hundreds of billions of dollars spent since the national commitment to wage a war on cancer, quote unquote, during the presidential administration of Richard Nixon in 1971, the momentum is firmly on the side of increased diagnosis. Then we talk to these various concepts that all fit in. Apoptosis. Our normal healthy body consists of 50 trillion cells. We talk about the next concept, autophagy. And this is something very, very important we've written about quite a bit in the last few books. The body recycles much of its dead cellular material from apoptosis. Next concept, necroptosis, about the external things we do that kill our cells, necroptosis. Eukaryotes and prokaryotes. This is very important. There are 2 different types of living cell organisms. The mutation of eukaryotes into the more primitive prokaryotic cells is a hallmark cause of cancer. And we then talk about the research of Otto Warburg, which confirms that. And this is all really important. This is all so important. I'm going to have to wrap it up and go forward in our next hour. I hope you have heard enough. I know I read real fast. Some of you get turned off when we're reading really, really fast about health issues. But if you got the book, you could read it as slow as you need to read it. Because the book, Living Super in Paradise, creating space for optimal health, for pristine health, is what you need to be doing. And I do see my first comment has just come in. For Africa One, I see you in the house, Hotep, Brother Kidi, and Global LAB family, Ubuntu. I am because we are. She writes, Ubuntu. Thank you, beloved. And I hope you have this book, Living Super in Paradise, Creating Space for Perfect Health. This is a really good book. It's one of the best books I ever did. And it's not really, it's 173 pages long, so I can't say it's a short read. But real quickly, chapter 5 is entitled Living Superfood Solutions, which later became a whole book of mine. Oh, I have to put this in. You're going to like this. This is What Do Superheroes Eat? When I found out, I searched, let me tell you this story. When we talk about what do superheroes eat, we hear so much about superheroes. With most of these superheroes, we presume that they derive their superpowers from some attribute which likely corresponds to their empowering characteristics, such as Spider-Man and his web magic power. There is one exception to this disconnect between power and nutrition. The exception is Popeye, the sailor man. With Popeye, we know what he eats is the source of his superhuman performance. A couple of years ago, it dawned on me that there was a significant story lying beneath the Popeye cartoons. It seemed to me that the scriptwriters were telling us a much deeper story. I searched across YouTube for some of those Popeye cartoons and quickly realized there was indeed a message encouraging the utility of healthy food. Spinach, in Popeye's case, as a vehicle for enhanced physical performance. What I found out was that 5 of the major characters in the cartoon series, Popeye, Olive Oil, Wimpy, Bluto, and Sweet Pea, all seem to have a relationship to nutrition. Let me clarify my point. Point 1, Popeye. Obviously, Popeye had a serious association between vegetarianism and his superhuman performance. I'm strong to the finish because I eats me spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. As badly as he might be getting beat upon or overwhelmed, Popeye, all he had to do was pop open a can of his favorite food and instantly he transformed to ultra high performance. I found a couple of cartoons which showed our would-be hero knocked into a garden, just happening to land in a spinach patch. Was it something about that raw, vegan spinach that made Popeye's superhuman strength explode even more than the canned version? As well as Popeye, what did he do with his superhuman strength? Nearly always, what he did with his superhuman powers, he would use it to save olive oil. He used his superpower to save his woman. When olive oil was in trouble, Popeye relied on his reliable source of superhuman strength to come to her rescue. Maybe there's a lesson for many more of us. After all, we should all remember one of Popeye's key taglines, I am what I am. One could meditate on that tagline for an extended period. It has deep tones of existentialism. Olive oil. Despite always getting into trouble, Popeye's girlfriend was truly a creature of great desire for Popeye and his nemesis. Among her notable attributes, olive oil was quite slim, as well as she was unmarried and had no child. You might refer to as, quote, extra light virgin olive oil. Katie, you're going deep. Wimpy. Although most often referred to simply by the familiar name, his longer moniker was J. Wellington Wimpy. His signature tag phrase, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. Although he sported a British accent, Wimpy ate strictly like an American, preferring his meat on a bun over all other culinary delights, preferring that. Could anyone ever recall an incident where Wimpy performed any heroic acts or fight to save their woman? As well, it is obvious that Wimpy was affected by obesity because of his limited diet. Bluto, his character was a beast. He was grossly overweight, lacked social skills, and was always in the mood for fight, and consistently had violent desires to molest olive oil. Bluto fits the profile of a beastly carnivore. I can't recall seeing what he ate, but I bet he loved his steaks rare. And lastly, Sweet Pea. There wasn't much personality from little Sweet Pea, but we do know that he was not extra light virgin olive oil's baby and that he was frequently in trouble. If nothing more than the name, his presence suggests that food, healthy food at that, was an important theme flowing throughout the entire cartoon series. So that's it. And then I talk further about breaking this all down, how it relates, and what we should do with it. Then we go into Miracles Do Happen, Chapter 5, Living Superfood Solutions. And Chapter 6 is entitled, We Have a Whole New World to Master. One quote, and then I'm going to go forward, from Dr. Bruce Lipton. We keep thinking that the human is evolving. No, the human has evolved to its extent. What's happening now is the organization of humans, just like cells organize to form people. People are organizing to form humanity. The paradox of evolving. And that's what I talk about in that chapter. And then chapter 8 is entitled, chapter 7, Learn from Those Who Know. And chapter 8, Everybody Has a Right to the Good Life. With this quote from James McGreevy, we need to have a purpose in this life. I'm pleading with you. I'm begging with you to do the right thing and do it not for the sake of how it will impact your own lives, but only for the sake of doing the right thing. That is that book. We've gone through it. I hope we can see. Shabaka is in the house. He says, greetings, Baba and LIB family. It's a great day to feed the brain. Love it, love it, love it. Brother Shabaka, we too appreciate you. I'm going now into the book, Africa Rising. Dawn is breaking over Africa. And chapter 1 of the book, it's the start of a brand new day. This quote, the future belongs to those who best invest their resources toward their own visions of sustainable development. For many Africans raised throughout the diaspora of the West, the sun is rising in the East. Sunrise is a beautiful time of day, full of possibilities as we awake refreshed, rejuvenated, and excited about the things we are determined to accomplish. We prepare for this to be a great day, refresh our bodies, put on our best face, and step out into the world. The air is alive and sparkling with the sound of an orchestra of songbirds celebrating this sunrise and the many opportunities that the dawning of this new day heralds. We have arrived at a crossroads. Africa rising, and dawn is breaking over Africa. For a growing number of capital investors around the world, the most exciting light rising in the world today is Africa. For people of African ascent around the world, this sunrise ushers in an era of potential economic empowerment to rival or exceed any such period affecting the destiny of a civilization in world history. With the pace of communications, technological innovation, and economic development moving at a fastest rate ever, we now have the potential to develop access to natural resources, engineering skills, human capital, and strategic planning at unprecedented scale. There are over 1 billion African people scattered all over the planet, and our continental homeland contains the greatest untapped natural resources of the whole planet. This is a time of great excitement over what this combination of elements means for our global vision of empowerment. Our challenge at this point is to educate as many of us as is necessary in order to create sufficient momentum to turn the tide of history. We have available capital resources. We are well trained in every aspect of building modern, technologically rich nations. Travel is easier and less expensive than ever when we adjust for inflation. With a few clicks on a computer keyboard, you are instantly tuned in to every location on the planet where African ascended people are doing amazing things. This is a time of great achievement. Now, I'm just sharing the introduction But there is so much more that we can be looking for when examining the top 35 fastest developing nations in the world. That's on year-to-year GDP growth rates. We find that 19 of these new economic dynamos are African nations, and 2 are majority black countries from the CARICOM community. They include, amongst the fastest growing, 35 fastest growing countries in the planet. Number 1, South Sudan, this fastest growing GDP economy. Number 2, Rwanda. Now, some of these were coming out of warfare, which is why they're artificially high for a few years, then they settle into a rhythm. Number 3, Libya. Number 4, Dominica, which is in the CARICOM. Number 5, Ethiopia. Number 6, Djibouti. Number 7, Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. Number 8, Benin. No, not number 8. Number 13 is Cote d'Ivoire. Number 15 of 35, Benin. Number 17, Tanzania. Number 18, Ghana. 21, the Gambia. 23 of 35, Mauritania. 24, Niger, I should say. 25, Burkina Faso. 27, Guinea. 28, Kenya. 30, number 30 of 35 is Egypt. 32, Cape Verde. 33, Togo. And tied for number 3 with Togo, fastest growing economy GDP year on year is Senegal. And number 35, Antigua and Barbuda, which is also in the Caribbean. Further, 1 second, let me just wet my throat here 1 second. That is so good and good for me. That particular list focuses on growth rates of gross domestic product, and thus indicates that the amount of domestic development is undergoing rapid change. When examined upon closer view, each of these nations has very specific areas of natural resources which contribute to or have the potential to contribute to their rapid growth. Several of these nations have been devastated by civil war in the latter part of the 20th century, are in critical stages of recovery. Others have been at peace for an extended time and are further along in their industrialization and resource development. Obviously, operating within countries that are stable and peaceful serves as much less risky investment environment. Yet in countries which are recovering from war, the return on investment motivates many established development partners to take on the greater challenges. Further, top nations' industrial growth include 13 African nations within the top 35, these being the more stable political and business environments. Energy-rich producers such as Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Nigeria, the Republic of the Congo, Libya, Algeria, and South Sudan are experiencing industrial booms as they are able to convert a significant portion of their oil and natural gas exports into domestic development and industrialization. As you will see later in this document, a number of new African nations are starting to realize their potential to become major energy producers and exporters. Beyond energy, there is an entire spectrum of strategic minerals that are found in great abundance within the 55 nations of the African continent. Profits from mining of copper, cobalt, gold, precious gems, coltan, zinc, tin, tungsten, iron ore, bauxite, uranium, and other minerals have driven industrial growth and wealth development on the planet for hundreds of years. Untapped reserves of these minerals within the continent are predicted to provide foundation for industrial manufacturing for the next 200 years and more. It is said of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is a major supplier of all of these resources, that at the present rate, they could continue to export for 2,000 years to come, and before they dries up. And then that doesn't even account for what they haven't found there yet. Not only is there tremendous wealth in developing strategic minerals extraction, but ecological sustainability demands that a whole new generation of green technology engineers must come forward to make extraction industries sustainable. The next chapter, chapter 2, Africa's abundance of natural resources. This quote from Tom Liebert from the New Internationalist, he wrote, I quote, Africa is blessed with a rich bounty of natural resources. The continent holds around 30% of the world's known mineral reserves. These include cobalt, uranium, diamonds, and gold, as well as significant oil and gas reserves. Let me just read some of my text. Beyond the almost unbelievable amounts of oil, natural gas, minerals, and precious gems that are produced from African soils, there is an entire spectrum of resources within these 55 nations that are being developed. Climate conditions within the tropical environment produce abundant rainfall across Central and Southern Africa, producing enough hydroelectric potential that could theoretically power the entire planet. Why then are so many African cities and villages plagued by the burden of insufficient electrification? What could we imagine as our indigenous efforts to bridge the gap between energy needs and supply? We should not be waiting on external powers to build a continental electrification system that will provide a basis for the African nations to surpass them in productivity. To further delay acting upon this imperative would be absurd. Massive hydroelectric projects are taking place all over the continent. Just one, the Inga Falls 3 project in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, expected to be 3 times larger than the world's current largest hydroelectric generating dam, China's Three Gorges hydro scheme. Additional resources to be found across the sub-Saharan region include forestry products, fauna and flora, agricultural products, as many kilometers of beautiful coastline, as well as many kilometers of beautiful coastlines. This report is to confirm within the reader that each of these areas is ripe for tremendous growth and development with an expected return on investment. The simple fact is that the African continent has been blessed by nature more than any other landmass, including the vast Asian continent. Within these soils, waters, and geography of the enormous dark continent, there is so much bounty that we would have to train 20 generations to exploit this abundance to its full potential. There is no justification for waiting any longer to implement this grand scheme. Our reward as a people for acting with deliberation will be to be once again regarded as wealthiest and most advanced civilization on this planet. Chapter 3 begins with a quote. Simply put, Africa represents investment opportunities with the possibility of higher returns, untapped markets, and a promising growth trajectory that suggests long-term return on investments. And that is from Africa is Primed for Private Equity Investments, written by Deepa Valiaba, Nicholas Gingeris, and Riola Koch, in-house community, January 2018. So we're talking about Chapter 3, Sovereign Wealth Funding. Many of us are unfamiliar with this term, sovereign funding. Sovereign wealth funding is a means by which a nation takes income from its natural resource abundance and converts it into a development capital intended to increase the domestic economy rapidly. This works best when the development is conducted by and for the benefit of the nation that is producing such resource abundance. Yet this is not always the case. Most sovereign wealth funding is conducted by foreign trade partners who allocate a portion of their sovereign wealth toward investment in infrastructure within other nations, we will further examine the expansion of export and import with these resource-rich nations. Thus, we can see that a large proportion of sovereign wealth funding that is developing projects across Africa originates in European, Asian, as well as North and South American nations. As common sense demonstrates, these foreign powers have been the chief beneficiary of Africa's resource wealth for centuries. They should not be expected to trade their privileged wealth position to other authorities to further the cause of, quote, doing the right thing. This is about global economic competition, and history has shown that this has too often been cruel to the cause of African nations' sovereignty, security, and human rights. It is time for a significant paradigm shift, and it must be reasonably expected that diaspora African populations could do a better job of investing and developing continental resources toward a better deal for the indigenous people. Africa had 14 sovereign wealth funds valued at $114 billion in 2009, which represented only 3% of such funds around the world. Still, the growth rate of these funds for the African continent was among the highest among their competitors around the world. The base of sovereign wealth funds continues to expand, and throughout the year, financial news is ripe with announcements of new African sovereign wealth fund launches. The reason that they are growing ever more rapidly each year is that they bring a high return on investment, ROI, to those institutions that have the foresight to move quickly into an investment opportunity. The rate at which China has risen since the mid-1970s to become Africa's leading foreign trade partner is indicative of trends that cannot be ignored. China is now the second largest economy on the planet and is predicted to overtake the United States as the number one position within 10 to 15 years at most. As of 2020, China had surpassed the U.S. in purchasing power parity, PPP, and is expected to be recognized as the unquestionable leading economic power as this pandemic-caused global depression proceeds. Chapter 4, The Great Value of Human Capital. I begin by quoting me from my book, Paradigm Shift. Over hundreds of years, the value of black labor built the most powerful agricultural economy that modern history has recorded throughout North and South America and the Caribbean. Ultimately, such demographic factors as population growth rates, literacy within the nation, education structures, urbanization, rural development, and the median age of a nation's population all come to factor in immensely concerning expected rates of progress. There is a great reason to be excited about the potential of Africa's vast populace, which crossed the 1 billion mark in 2013. Some African cities such as Cape Town, Accra, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Gaborone, Libreville, Dar es Salaam, Windhoek, and Kigali are recommended as the best African cities for beautiful geography, quality living, and friendliness of business environment. Beyond the large metropolitan areas, smaller cities and rural villages provide immense opportunities for human capital development. Many of these areas have a willing, educated workforce that is primed and ready for large and small-scale industrial development. Additionally, there is an excellent opportunity for diaspora Africans to set up additional education facilities to train these youth and adults to operate small and medium-scale industrial enterprises. Many of these rural areas are sitting on immense resources, and their people are aware of their potential. Yet, because of centuries of colonial exploitation and educational neglect, the resources that could have transformed these areas have been beyond the reach of these populations until recent. Investment in human capital has always proven to yield the highest return on investment. We know this to be accurate within our own families and communities, as well as across the globe. African citizens, especially the youth, are hungry for opportunity and consistently demonstrate a willingness to work and to expand their skills and training. What these young people bring to a business enterprise is the key to our rapid rise in global business development. The rapid ascension of African middle-class families is securing the continent's position as developed and prosperous for this century and an extended future. And in the book later, I do a great breakdown. And let me kind of go to that section right now. We're talking about the growth of Africa's middle class. Compare that to the growth of the middle class as a percentage of the national population in Western countries. We can find Africa is winning and America is losing. And chapter 5, prime areas for investment, I talk about. Let me just real quickly go through this. If you are considering being an investor, joining an investment group, starting an investment group, please do not hesitate. These are the areas you want to concentrate on. Telecommunications. Second of which, I explain each in detail. Energy development. That's where I am primarily concerned and in creating investment opportunities. Energy development. Renewable energies, especially solar, wind power, ocean power, geothermal, microgrids, very important. African agribusiness unleashed, very important area for our future investment. Cultural tourism, very important investment area. And lastly, the economy of ecology. That's a very important 5 key critical areas for investment. Chapter 6, Quantifying Africa's Economic Trends, begins with this quote from Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop in his book, Black Africa. A federated Black Africa has the potential to become both industrially and politically as powerful as either the USSR or the United States. That quote from Sheikh Anta Diop in his book, Black Africa, The Economic and Cultural Basis for a Federated State by Sheikh Anta Diop. Please do not overlook that book, Black Africa by Sheikh Anta Diop. You will be most proud of what you learn. Here's what we're seeing. There are many facets to this decline. I'm writing about within the United States, the presence of a large, stable, and increasing middle class was one of the hallmarks of the nation's prosperity in the 20th century. By the middle of the second decade of this 21st century, that trend was reversing. For many Black households who have been struggling to hold on to household fiscal stability far longer than the national average, this situation has gotten even direr over the past 4 decades. By the middle of the second century of this 21st century, that trend was reversing. Now, where were we? This situation gotten even more dire over the past 4 decades. Like the proverbial quote, canary in the mine, The tribulations of middle-class blacks have now been replicated over a much broader segment of the American population. The suppressed status of Afro-Americans bodes ill for the nation's future. As more wealth and income have become concentrated in a smaller segment of society, the shrunken middle class has come to haunt America's primacy in the world and its stability at home. This is all very, very important. Listen, listen, listen. There are many facets to this decline of the middle class American household over the past century. Here are just a few published references which facilitate our comprehension of this American existential dilemma. Number one, and I'm only going to just cite a couple of these because I cited many of these to convince you that, yeah, this is real. It's really happening. The middle class has been shrinking since the 1970s. Point one, why America's middle class is lost. The Washington Post. Quote, the middle class took America to the moon. Then something went horribly wrong. Yes, the stock market is soaring. The unemployment rate is finally retreating after the Great Recession. And the economy added 321,000 jobs last month. But all that growth has done nothing to boost pay for the typical American worker. Average wages haven't risen over the last year after adjusting for inflation. Real household median income is still lower than it was when the recession ended. Make no mistake, the American middle class is in trouble. That trouble started decades ago, well before the 2008 financial crisis, and is rooted in shifts far more complicated than the simple tax and spend debates that dominate economic policy making in Washington. And I gave you the reference for that second article. The middle class is shrinking just about everywhere in America, from the Washington Post. Quote, the great shrinking of the middle class that has captured the attention of the nation is not only playing out in troubled regions like the Rust Belt, Appalachia, and the Deep South, but in just about every metropolitan area in America, according to a new policy analysis by the Pew Research Center. Quote, from the Pew Research, that shrinking middle class is in part a reflection of rising income inequality in America and of the same underlying and uneven economic forces that have fueled the rise of Donald Trump. And as the middle class has been shrinking, median incomes have fallen too. In 190 of these 229 metros, the median income dropped over the same time. As the middle class has shrunk, Pew points out, the lower and upper classes in America have grown in size and significance. In some metros, the middle class is dwindling primarily because families are falling out of it and into the lower class. This share of households in this bottom tier has skyrocketed since 2000, close quote. And lastly, I'm going to cite one more of these articles. And this one, in a recovery market, home ownership, not homosexuality, in a recovering market, home ownership rates are down sharply for blacks and young adults. This from the Pew Research Center. Quote, most renters say they would like to own in the future, but financial constraints are an obstacle. A Pew Research Center analysis of Census Bureau and mortgage loan data indicates that the decline of ownership since 2004 has been more pronounced among households headed by young adults, blacks, and those in the lower income tier. A substantial portion of the ongoing fallout in home ownership reflects fewer renter households transitioning to home ownership, rather than homeowners being forced out of the market through foreclosure or other financial difficulty. The majority of Americans, 64%, including similar shares across age groups, say home ownership is not affordable for young adults in their 20s and 30s these days. About half of the public, 52%, say it is important to own a home in order to be considered part of the American middle class. This ranks lower than having a secure job, 90%, and being able to save money for the future, 82%, but above having a college education at 27%. So one can easily determine from these and more that the middle class is shrinking in America, while at the same time, on page 29 of the book, the subchapter entitled Growing Middle Class in Africa. In an earlier chapter, we listed multiple advantages to Africa's economic future that are becoming ever more evident. This long list included an advantageous demographic dividend, rapidly expanding and more equitable trade relations, significant annual infrastructure investment, a rapid increase in electrification across the continent, sustained rates of GDP growth, significantly higher than the global average, increased access to ever higher quality education for the teeming mass of youthful population, lessening of the burden of violence and warfare, an increase of democratization and good governance, transactional cooperation, transnational cooperation and collaboration under the aegis of the African Union, the African Development Bank, and multiple regional economic communities, RECs, as well as the fastest rate of growth of middle-class households compared to other regions of the globe. We acknowledge that centuries of conquest, enslavement, colonial depletion of natural wealth, gross mismanagement of income from resource extraction, underdevelopment, infrastructure, and lack of access to crucial technologies has left much of the continental population mired in extreme poverty, lack of upward mobility, and unpreparedness for sustainable self-development. This retarded development has persisted for centuries. The good news is that this is all changing at this time, right before our eyes, and is becoming more evident as the first 2 decades of the 21st century have progressed. We call this new era of progress Africa Rising. We must acknowledge that there are several problems with the declarations on rising middle class status across Africa. All is not rose-colored glasses, and as well, mere growth in that which is defined as an African middle class is not a panacea for the myriad of woes which continental populations experience. As we delicately balance these signs of what are in comparison to what will likely be, there is great reason to be optimistic. As a social scientist, I am required to be pragmatic and realistic. As a lover of Africa, as well as its global family, and continuously fed by daily infusion of good news about our development, I am among the most, quote, Afro-optimistic, unquote, members of my large peer group. I am in frequent debate with those who feel otherwise about the continent's current and future status. In such cases, putting relevant facts on the table, realities which are precise, irrefutable, and highly impacting, is the preferred tactic for engaging in such intellectual battle. Let's deal with the facts regarding the myth or reality of Africa's rising middle class. Point 1, an emerging middle class, the OECD Observer. Quote, the increase in average incomes and the fall in levels of absolute poverty, in particularly during the last decade, suggests that an increasing proportion of the world's population is neither rich nor poor by national standards, but finds itself in the middle of the income distribution. They wrote in 2009 the middle class included 1.8 billion people, with Europe 664 million, Asia 525 million, North America 338 million, accounting for the highest number of people belonging to this group. Even in Africa, where middle class growth has not been very robust, it has nonetheless been noticeable and contributed to increased domestic consumption in many countries. Sales of refrigerators, television sets, mobile phones, motors, and automobiles have surged in virtually every African country in recent years. Possession of cars and motorcycles in Ghana, for example, has increased by 81% since 2006. Second article, the middle of the pyramid, the dynamics of the middle class in Africa. This written by the African Development Bank. Quote, strong economic growth in the past 2 decades has helped to reduce poverty in Africa and increase the size of the middle class. By 2010, the middle class had risen to 34% of Africa's population, or nearly 350 million people, up from about 126 million, or 27% in 1980, 27% in 1990, and about 220 million people, or 27% in 2000. This represents a growth rate of 3.1% in the middle class population over the period from 1980 to 2010, compared with a growth rate of 2.6% in the continent's overall population over the same period. Next article I'll cite, and it goes on, that previous one went on. Next article, I'm just going to cite just a header. Africa's rising middle class amid plenty and extreme poverty, from the European Center for Development Policy. And so we're confirming this. Next article I use to confirm it, Africa's rising mobile class and why it matters, from New African Magazine. Let me cite this one. Quote, yet despite the disparities in exactly how big it is, all observers, including the African Development Bank, the Standard Bank, remain convinced Africa's consumer market is burgeoning and bringing with it increased opportunities for businesses on the continent. Investor George Soros says the growth of the continent's middle class is one of the only economic bright spots across the world currently. This international interest in Africa is only set to increase as the middle class, however we define it, continues to grow. The African Development Bank says there will be 1.1 billion middle-class Africans by 2060, while the McKinsey Global Institute thinks African consumer spending will hit 1.4 trillion as soon as 2020. Well, African consumer spending has now surpassed 1.1 trillion, and at my last glance, it looked at as if it were about $3 trillion a year for the 55 countries, 54 plus Western Sahara, of the African continent. And lastly, just going to give the headline on this last article. There's more. How big really is Africa's middle class? I'll read this one paragraph. Last September, Standard Bank published a study that sent ripples of discomfort through the community of African economists. The report examined the middle class in 11 sub-Saharan African countries that account for over half of the region's GDP. Using its own definitions, it's estimated the size of the middle class in all these countries combined to be just 15 million. This puts Nigeria's middle class at 4.1 million, or a mere 11% of the population. Estimated the middle class population to account for just 21% of Angola's households, 14% of Sudan's, and about 10% of Zambia's. Furthermore, Standard Bank research found that most African households remained in a low-income band, and overwhelmingly 94 million individuals, or 86% of the sample populations. Going forward, quantifying Africa's economic trends. Next subchapter, we talk about urbanization trends and national vigor. And the next one, improvement of health infrastructure across Africa. That's very important for me, but we're just giving you the highlights. I hope that the following list of contemporary healthcare challenges affecting emerging economies inspires you to take responsibility for improving healthcare delivery to our global tribe. There's a great need for point, improving capacity to respond to large-scale disease outbreaks. Point 2, training doctors, nurses, and healthcare experts. Point 3, improving the healthcare provider to client ratio. Point 4, raising revenue to build up healthcare resources. Point 5, improving procurement of medical products and technologies. Point 6, incorporating indigenous and traditional healthcare into modern methodologies. Next point, reducing a pathological dependence on foreign aid. Point, improving the capacity and delivery of mental health services. Point, implementing macro projects to take on malaria, lower respiratory infections, tuberculosis and or pneumonia, AIDS, more accurately, acute opportunistic infection from impaired immune system function, and, quote, severe diarrheal diseases from parasitic infections. And it goes on more of our tasks. Things for us to do, a to-do list where you find your passion. You find your skills, your resources, your talents that make you unique and make you so valuable to the world. And you commit to your best self-interest. And you also commit to adding them to this global narrative that we call in this book, Africa Rising. Dawn is breaking over Africa. This is very serious. Next subchapter, free trade zones and regional economic communities. This is really important. We talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area, the largest free trade area in the world. I will force myself to combine these developments to 4 key areas herein: the growth of regional economic communities, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA, the African Continental Union's Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, and the Tripartite Agreement. And I'm going to quickly see if we can get through these. Regional economic communities. Now, I know I can't get through these quickly because I pulled the book out last night and was reading it. I said, there's a lot of RECs. The African Union, the continental wide body of all 55 recognized sovereign states. Its members have ratified or acceded to the Constitutive Act of the African Union. It is the formulation of the AU that stands as the essential building block for eventual federation of most, if not all, African nations by mid-century. It is expected to be federated into a major state somewhere between 2050 and 2063. This group of 52 republics and 3 monarchies recognizes 5 primary regional blocks known as regional economic communities, commonly abbreviated as RECs. Membership within these RECs range in the number from 5 to 15 nations. It is within these RECs, some of which have moved toward more integrated communities, that the first stages of the Continental Federation are taking place. The East African Community is forecast to be the first regional confederation. It actually will perhaps be the second, because the first of these regional confederations is the new Confederation of Sahel States, the CSS, which became a single political entity in July 2024. That is the CSS, Confederation of Sahel States. The East African Community is forecast to be the second regional confederation, anticipated to take place sometime after 2020. It's now expected to be here, delivered as early as 2027. A federation within the EAC would create the 9th most populous nation on earth and Africa's largest country. The 5 primary RECs of the AU: number 1, Southern African Development Community, SADC. With 15 members, this bloc was established in August 2008 after the implementation of the SADC Protocol on Trade, in 2000 laid the foundation for its formation. Its original members were Botswana, Lesotho, Madagascar, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, Swaziland, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, with Malawi and the Seychelles joining later. Of the 15 SADC member nations, only Angola and the DR Congo are not yet participating. Number 2, the East African Community, EAC, currently has 6 members. It's now expanded to 8 members. Within the African Great Lakes region, in Eastern Africa, Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda. It is expected to expand to include Somalia into the EAC in the decade ahead. It has just been accomplished, and it does also include the Democratic Republic of the Congo. As in the case of South Sudan, Somalia has for decades remained plagued with severe security problems. Well, got good news. Somalia is moving beyond the plague of security problems. The Economic Community of Central African States, ECCAS, 11 members consisting of Angola, Burundi, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Brazzaville, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kinshasa, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, along with Sao Tome and Principe. Next is the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, 15 members to include Benin, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Ivory Coast, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. 8 of these ECOWAS members are French-speaking, 5 are English-speaking, and 2 are Portuguese-speaking. All current members joined the community as founding members in May 1975, except Cape Verde, which joined in 1977. ECOWAS has created Africa's most significant indigenous military force called ECOMOG, established in 1990, and among whose members have signed a non-aggression pact. And they almost violated that non-aggression pact after coup d'etats changed the governments in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. They threatened to attack those newly formed, coup-formed governments, but the kings across the ECOWAS community said no, no, no. And when the kings vetoed it, that put up a whole new concept of power distribution across the ECOWAS community. The Arab Maghreb Union, AMA, UMA, it's actually UMA. Its 5 members are the nations of Algeria, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, and Tunisia. Only Mauritania has a black majority population. The other UMA members are also affiliates of the Arab League, and along with Egypt, which is not a UMA member. Then we talk about overlapping and integrated regional economic communities. I'm only going to give you the highlights of these. If you're interested, you'll look them up and learn much, much more. Or you will get the book, Africa Rising, Dawn is Breaking in the East. Dawn is breaking over Africa. And you will see, I've already done the work. The community of Sahel states, Sahel-Saharan states, CENSAD, of which those included Burkina Faso, Chad, Libya, Mali, Niger, and Sudan, has now split into the Association of Sahel States and the Confederation of Sahel States. The Confederation of Sahel States is a union of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, that's a very important organization, you should know about it. Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, an 8-member trade bloc, which includes governments from the Horn of Africa, from the Nile Valley, and the Great Lakes region. Headquartered in Djibouti City, member nations are Djibouti, Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea, Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda. You can see that the IGAD very closely resembles and is being absorbed into and overtaken by the East African community. REC subgroups include Economic Monetary Community of Central Africa, West African Economic and Monetary Union, West African Monetary Zone, Southern Africa Customs Union, and then we come to AGOA, African Growth and Opportunities Act. I'm not going to spend too much time on AGOA. It has been recently renewed under Donald Trump's regime, but for somebody who regards African countries to be, quote, S-hole countries, I don't know how much we put into AGOA. And the fact of the matter is that most of the benefits of AGOA have gone to corporations, mostly the oil corporations. But it talked about the United States Congress enacted the African Growth and Opportunities Act in May 2000. Its purpose is to assist sub-Saharan African national economies and to improve economic relations between the United States and the region. But I say it exists to preserve the unequitable trade relationships between Africa and the world. Real quickly, I'm going to touch on the AFCFTA. When I wrote the book in June 2015, the African Union held its 25th annual AU Summit in Johannesburg. That year, it was proposed to create an African Continental Free Trade Area, CFTA, to be in place by 2017. And it was inaugurated in January 2021 to include all 55 African nations as members of a free trade area. These negotiations did produce the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, the single continental market for goods and services with free movement of business people and investments, and thus paved the way for accelerating the establishment of the Continental Customs Union and the African Customs Union. And so we have the AFCFTA, the largest trade agreement ever in the world. It is in existence now, but we as Africans in America, we don't really have a stake in that. In my mind, we would put together a sovereign wealth fund, take a portion, say 10% of the $1.93 trillion which we spent on consumerism as of the year 2025, take 10% of that and put that into a sovereign wealth fund. That would encompass what, 19 billion or $190 billion, or at least $19 billion. We take 1% of it, put that money into a sovereign wealth fund, and use it to leverage the African Continental Free Trade Area, facilitate it. But our people apparently just don't see things the way that I do. We're going to move forward. And then we talk about another ambitious Continental Free Trade Area accord is the Tripartite Agreement, launched in June 2015 at a meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. A gathering of member countries from 3 large RECs, COMESA, the East African Community, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC. It was launched by those 3. 2 years later, the process was still not yet complete, as reported on their website. So SADC, COMESA, and the East African Community put that together, but now the Tripartite Agreement is subservient to the African Continental Free Trade Area. And then Sustainable Development Goals. Hey, we're out of time. The Sustainable Development Goals, 17 specific goals, including no poverty, 0 hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate change, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions and partnerships for implementing the goals. These are all in the book. And we close out with chapters on the AU Agenda, Strategic Vision 2063, the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Every one of you, every one of us has a copy of that. If you don't, get the book, and now you have a copy of the 47 specific goals of Agenda 2063. Next, with the book, we talk about the past, present, and the future of Africa. Number 8, chapter 8, Bullet Train to the African Future, and that's very important. Chapter 9, Paradigm Shift. Paradigm shift. We do come to understand. And in chapter 10, what is Africa Rising? Africa Rising refers to an ongoing narrative that has become ever more defined since the year 2000, wherein across the continent, especially within sub-Saharan Africa, a combination of dynamic, non-linear transformations is occurring. That is my quote. And then we ask, how can Africa Rising be quantified? Well, I give you a long, long list of how we do quantify it. What is Africa Rising? Africa Rising is all of our future, but we have to claim that future. And if we do not claim it, don't worry. Others will claim it in your name. We'll build on it in your name. You will have passively signed on to their agenda. And quite simply, I don't think we can trust history to define our future for us. 2 books we studied today. I hope you do enjoy them. I hope you do get the books. I'm hoping. It's been my hope. And I have seen the book sales go up a little bit, but not nearly to manage the potential that's there. Last month, we didn't do bad with our online book sales from Amazon. This month, I am shipping many, many more books, including the 2 new books I'm shipping from my catalog. And if you are interested, I hope you are, in getting these books, I want you to go to the website. Go to www.conscious, typo, wide fingers, Conscious Rasta Press.com and look for today's, bad spelling, look for today's book studies. So that's what we do. When we get together with you to do the do, I'm very serious about it. I see you in the house, Brother Eddie McCrory. It's always great to have you in the house. And to those of you who have been listening in the background and didn't even say hello, we understand. We understand completely how you have come to this deficit thinking about Africa. Let me type in this once again, because I didn't type it in right. It's the Conscious Rasta Press.com. Yeah, it should be right. CONSCIOUS RastaPress.com. And I know it's right now. So do log in. Do take advantage of who we are, what we have to do, and where we are going with today's book study and today's future. Use the second link that I put up. Some odd reason the first one is wrong. I don't see what's wrong with it, but it is not right. You've been tuned into your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are living in black.com. Tell your friends to tell their friends that we have our own now. And you should be trusting us to protect your self-interest with today's conversation. We're talking truth to the very best of our abilities. Africa is rising. We got next.